Looking for the skills and training you need to get a new career? Call CTC, the Center for Training and Careers, and start working towards that new career today. Call CTC in San Jose.
Good evening. I'm Cihuapilli Rose Amador, and this is Native Voice TV. Welcome to the show. Well, this evening we have with us Assemblyman Joe Coto. Welcome, Joe. It's
Good
been
to
a
see you,
while.
Rose. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thanks for being here. It's been a while since you've been on the show, and you've been hard at work, and you've passed some bills, introduced the bills and passed the bills that help Native people.
Yes, quite a few of them. In fact, let me tell you about some of these because I think they're very, very significant pieces of legislation. And the more exciting part was that they were signed by the governor, so they're now the law of the state of California. The first one deals with the native languages. And what I was trying to get to was that thousands of languages are disappearing worldwide, and particularly a lot of the native languages are disappearing. And, you know, as our elders expire and they leave us, if they don't pass on their languages to our young people, then the languages are forgotten. So what we did was introduce legislation that will now enable tribes in California, native tribes in California, to be able to identify the elders in their communities who speak a language, and they will verify that through the Native American Indian Commission that they know the language, and then they'll be able to apply for a teaching credential so that then they can go and teach the language to our kids, so that then the languages there will always be people teaching these native languages. So rather than they're disappearing, there will be the opportunity to teach these languages in our schools so that they're not forgotten. And it's very, very exciting. The Teaching Credentialing Commission is going to work with the Native American Commission, and they're going to make sure that that when they validate a native speaker, that then they will give them opportunities to go and teach the language in our schools. Thought that was very, very exciting.
Oh, it is. Now, is that going to be like elementary school or high schools or both?
It will be both. It will be both. You can do it in colleges. You can do it anywhere. See, the idea, very, very important. The idea, of course, is to have a constant teaching of these languages and reinforcing of these languages, because if you don't have people learning them, then they'll disappear.
And there's so many of the languages with all the different tribes. And then for years, a lot of the kids didn't learn the language because they weren't allowed to. You know, it was a bad thing to pass on the language or to speak the language, or they got punished for speaking the language.
All the time. I mean, they would tell them that they were being impolite and that they were not courteous and that they should speak English, and this is America and we speak English, and the teachers, in fact, were not very pleasant very often with our kids. So now this promotes it. Now this says that a person who speaks the native language and knows it will be trained on how to teach it, will be taught teaching methods and techniques like any other teacher, and will be able to go into a classroom and be able to teach that language. So that's one that I'm very, very excited about.
Has that actually started? Have they gone?
Well, no, it takes effect in January of this year.
Oh, that's
so
great.
The governor signed it. Now it'll take place in January.
That's important for the community to know that, so they can start encouraging people that know the language.
Yes, and we need to let the state superintendent of public instruction let every one of the 1,000 school districts in the state know that is, so they'll have a way of communicating that way. The second bill I think that you'd be pleased with is the bill that deals with the Indian education centers. You know, the federal government for many, many years has funded Indian education centers in different regions of the state, so that then parents of Native American kids can form an advisory committee and advise the superintendent of public instruction about what kinds of improvements and changes they need to make in the school. It also is a place where parents who are having difficulty with their students, with their children in school, have a place to go to complain and to ask for remediation and to say, look, my youngster's having difficulty. It also is a place where school districts could go and seek out support from the Indian education centers when they'd like to implement programs or they'd like to try out new techniques for helping Native kids in our schools. The bill was going to expire. I mean, the bill was going to end. It was going to sunset, and there was not any move or any push by the Department of Education to try to reinstate the bill. They were just going to leave it there.
Oh, you're kidding.
Right? No, they were just going to let it
You know,
die
it's
in
located
essence.
right there at CTC, the American Education
Sure,
Center.
of course. So,
Oh, my
so what I
goodness.
did was my legislation says, no, let's keep it going for another 5 years. Let's extend the life of the programs. Let's make sure that the state superintendent of public instruction appoints a committee, a statewide committee, to advise the state superintendent on what problems we're having with the education of our Native kids. And again, the governor liked the bill and he signed the bill, and it's now going to extend the life of the education centers for another 5 years. So that was very, very important. You know, in the past, I've also done other legislation that help our Native American community. The one that was particularly critical, I felt, was the Sacred Sites Bill, because they had tried for many, many years to try to protect sacred sites, burial grounds,
Right.
etc., and places where Native communities existed long before anyone else arrived here. And very often, you know, a developer would go in and buy huge pieces of property, would go in and just pave over them and build housing or whatever they build,
Right.
without ever taking into consideration the fact that this might have been a sacred site, that this might have been a burial ground, that this might have been the location of a community, of a Native community. So what my bill now does is that before they're able to do any of that, they have to go and they have to validate that it is not a sacred site. They have to let the commission come in and review and assess the possibility that it might be a sacred site. And before they're able to proceed, they have to take steps to make sure that they can work around the sacred site and or make sure that they protect the remains that might be the remains of our elders. It could be a burial ground or they fought very hard to prevent the bill from getting signed, you know.
Is there no bill in place right now for that?
No, this is the one, it is now that my bill got done.
And that takes effect when?
That's already in effect.
Because
That's
they're
already in
still
effect.
doing. Well, in fact, we had a show on that
Yes.
probably a couple of months ago.
Sure.
On protecting the sacred sites.
Yeah, so my bill covers that. My bill is the bill that now will govern how all of that takes place. You just can't run over people. You have to take into consideration, you know, that this might be a sacred site, might be a place of a burial grounds, might be where a local community was held and they existed, and they have to take that into account. Then, of course, you know that another bill that I introduced that I'm very proud of was the one where we were able to get the state to redesignate what was the Chumash Trail that led to Santa Ynez Band of Mission Indians there in near Santa Barbara, and they had been renamed to the San Marcos Trail, and the Santa Ynez Band of Mission Indians wanted to take steps to rename it, you know, the Chumash Trail, because that was the official, that was the original, that was the you know, what connected all of the different tribal communities was this trail, and they built a freeway through it, of course, and they called it the San Marcos Highway. And the Santa Ynez Band of Indians wanted us to rename it, so I took that bill to the legislature. Local communities also fought very hard to have it happen, but in the end, you know, the governor agreed with me and he signed the bill, and now it's the Chumash Trail. So what they're doing now is volunteering. They have to raise private money so that then they could put up the signage
Change all the signs.
change all the signs do it that way. Then, of course, that it was my bill that led to the authorization of the last round of tribal gaming in California. The 5 major casinos reworked that. It was my memorandum of understanding that allowed that to continue, so that we've got a long-term relationship now with the state, and so the tribal communities, of course, can develop economically and can broaden their economic base, so it's not totally gaming, but they can now go into other forms of economics. So, I mean, those are the types of bills that I've been doing in Sacramento that I'm very proud of, that will be of great benefit to the Native American community. Because if we can protect our languages, if we can ensure that our sacred lands are sacred, in fact, and are protected, if we can ensure that there is opportunities for economic development, if we can continue to always make sure that that places like the Chumash Trail aren't changed because some local politician wants to, that we got to respect those people who have been here, who were here before we ever got here, and who built this great land of California and this land of America. So I'm very proud of those pieces of legislation.
And I thank you for them, because the educational resources are so scarce.
Yes.
And it's important that they continue what little there is for the the after-school programs, all the services for the kids, the families. They're just so needed.
Yes.
In our communities.
No, and there's this misunderstanding or misappreciation of the fact that some people think that because there are quite a few casinos that are owned by tribes, that takes care of all the problems, and that they're earning all of this money. It's really not the case. I mean, it hasn't been going on for very long, and we're always very sensitive to the fact that we broaden the economic base and we go to other areas besides gaming. And, our dropout rate among our Native kids is still very, very serious. The obesity rate among our Native American kids is very serious. Diseases that have been, that we've already found still impact our communities. So we got to keep being vigilant and keep working at it. And that's what I intend to do.
And you've done a lot, and I really appreciate it, because I know there was a few years back too, you've helped with the American Indian Alliance, several of the different events, the Christmas party they have for the kids, the heritage celebration that we've had the last few years. You've been very supportive. I know one time I think I ran into you at the comedy show the Indian Health Center was having, and we were planning the Christmas dinner or something, and where they were renting the hall, the price went up, and it was like, what are we going to do? Oh, no. And I told Joe, what are we going to do? You go, I'll help. And you did. You came through and helped the Alliance with the...
And I intend to do that. In fact, one of my favorite experiences was when I went to that comedy show, the Native American comedy show, and they asked for volunteers to come up to the stage, and I raised my hand, and I went out there and I participated in
did a good job.
Part of the show. I did okay, right?
Yes, you did.
I'm not going to quit my day job, but I did a good job. Huh?
Well, it's always a good backup, huh? Yeah. Well, speaking of that, so what's next? Your time's up in the Assembly now.
I know. I still have a lot of work to do. I mean, I still have a lot of work to do.
Yes, you do, and we need that support at a higher level.
Yes.
So.
Well, I'm going to be running for the Senate.
Okay,
the
good.
Senate,
that's what I wanted to hear.
Senate 13, Senate District 13. There's a lot of work yet that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
And I intend to follow along the same ways that I've done in the years that I've been there. I've been very, very fortunate in that if you demonstrate that you're committed to these issues, then you're able to build relationships and support to help you get them through. Initially, they said the governor's not going to sign the Native Languages Bill. Governor's not going to sign the Sacred Sites Bill, and he signed all of the bills that I proposed and put in front of him that impact upon our Native population. So I need to keep doing that, and with your help, we're going to keep plugging away at it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm thrilled, and I was thrilled when you announced about the Native language, because It's just needed.
Yes.
It's really needed because so many of our kids are just saying, I didn't learn it, or my parents didn't learn it because they weren't allowed to speak it. And it's an opportunity for the kids to get it back and pass it down to
And to make
their
it part of
children.
an integral part of our public school system.
Absolutely.
You know, it will be a part of the credentialing system of all teachers in California. So if anyone out there knows of anyone that speaks a language and that would like to teach it to our kids, we would encourage them to contact the Native American Commission and say that they would like to become a teacher of this native language, and they will train them, and they will give them a credential, and then they'll find places for them to go teach that in our schools. So it's an exciting bill.
It certainly is. We have to get the word out there. So you have another year, and what will we be doing during that year?
Well, I'm going to be working on the issue of obesity and diabetes. It's a huge
excellent.
problem.
Tell me about that.
Well, we want to, part of the issue is one where, the president's wife, Michelle Obama, has taken on as a big issue. We're in a situation where if we're not careful, and even if we are careful now, where this is going to be the first generation where our kids are not going to outlive their parents. And it's all about diabetes.
Right.
There was a report that came out the other day, Rose, that says that by the year 2050, 1 out of every 3 Americans are going to have diabetes. So it's hundreds of billions of dollars that it's costing us. And it's something that we can do. Highest in the Native community. So it's one thing that we can solve. I mean, we got to change our diet. We have to change our exercise habits. We've got to get more rest. But basically, if we eat well and we exercise and we change our habits that way, in terms of the food that we eat, then we can maintain the way, as we're growing up, we can maintain the right kind of weight. So I'm going to be working with the schools. I'm going to be working with the schools, educating kids about what they ought to be eating and how they ought to be exercising and how important that is. We've done several very, very, very important events. We did one at the Cathedral of Faith, where we had over 7,000 people who came. And we had the Kaiser Permanente Hospital, Kaiser Permanente Health Group. Their doctors came and talked to kids. They have what they call a teddy bear clinic. You'd love it. I mean, these doctors with their smocks, with their robe, with their doctor's outfits, sit with kids in a little semicircle, and they give them all a teddy bear, and then they engage them in a discussion about how are you going to make sure that your teddy bear, grows up to be healthy. And then the kids would say, well, I'm going to make sure that he eats. Well, what kind of food do you want him to eat? And they engage the kids, little kids, in terms of understanding the importance of diet and exercise. So we just did one over here at the Children's Discovery Museum, and we had over 1,000 people there also, where we talk to kids and educate kids about the importance of diet and exercise and healthy living. And now we also have to work on the issue of the fact that fast foods and fast food outlets spend millions of dollars on television talking about how good their food is, and we program our kids to think that eating fast foods is good and tasty, etc. And it really is very, very bad for you, and it's loaded with fat. And so we're gonna keep working on those issues.
That's terrible, and it's because we're always in a hurry. That's why it's
always
fast
in a
food.
hurry. Yes,
we have to slow down and cook some healthy food. I know you work closely with the Indian Health Center as well, because I've seen you have a lot of the
Yes, I have.
events.
In fact, it was there that I think it was there that there was this doctor who had one of the these huge containers from Arrowhead Water, or those water big ones like that. Had one like that was full of sugar. It was almost all the way to the top. And he was telling the people that were going by, and the kids particularly, that if you drink 1 soda pop a day, 1 soda a day, that's how much sugar your body will consume. Now, I want you to visualize one of those huge containers, water containers that you see all the time, and it's all the way to the top of sugar. That's how much you'll consume, sugar you'll consume if you eat a soda a day. So we've got a lot of work to do, and
we
I'm
certainly
going to keep working with you on it. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's
Well,
great.
thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work you've done for the community. But I have to thank you. So when you first came into office, you made me your Woman of the Year.
Woman of the Year.
So I really appreciate
Well, you
that.
deserved every bit of it.
Thank you.
It was an honor for me to do that.
I have that
and you
plaque
were
in
great.
my office.
Good for you. And your information hangs up there in the museum in Sacramento, so people can go up there and see.
And now
you.
I tell people I'm in a museum. I mean, it makes me sound old, but.
No, you ought to go see it. Good. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for being here, Joe. Appreciate
My pleasure.
it.
Thank you very much, Rose.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Good evening.
Indigenous soul, indigenous soul. Indigenous soul, indigenous soul. Indigenous soul, indigenous soul. Indigenous soul. Indigenous soul, indigenous soul. Indigenous soul, indigenous soul. Indigenous soul, indigenous soul. Indigenous soul. Indigenous soul, indigenous soul.
He was singing for the Native TANF program, and they were having a picnic, and all the kids they were all lined up where they were just fascinated with him. And so he was singing his music, and I said, you sang The Devil's Son in Whiskey Train to those little kids. But they liked it. Song The Devil's Son. That's right.
Well, there's a
When he
story.
was-
There's
Yeah,
a story
there
behind
is.
that song. Actually, it's not as bad as you think it is. I mean, it's just all right. The misconception. Everybody, people throw the devil in there, and everybody always gets scared. And there's like country music and rock music. Stones and then Dylan they got the devil in it. It's just basically about as parents, or as your parents before. There's always someone that comes after your daughter or your son, and you don't want them to be around because there's such a bad influence.
That
and
wasn't you, right?
No, well, sort of. But that was what it was around. And at one time, my grandmother had mentioned when this is way back, she said that, you got to stop hanging around with that girl because, they said that you's the devil.
Okay, ladies, I have a brother who sings. He makes fry bread, and he cooks the best salsa in the world. Taking applications. And he's single. What are you making, Skylar? Fry bread. Who taught you how to make fry bread?
Straight from motherhood. Mothers of all mothers, they say your grandma. Not your mama, your grandma.
And which tribe would that be?
It's a little hard work and they feel hard work.
Every night say the sinful heart calls my name. Thorns has unlocked the door, thorns and roses for her soul. I'm the black angel, devil's son. I'm the black angel, the devil's son. It's the curse of the black rain. She won't look out the window, 'cause what she wants hides behind the door on the black